Knowledge of self. We promote that heavy. You need to have knowledge of self. This is going to help you understand the different components of your life that you can use to your advantage. For instance, I'll take my sign as Taurus, which I thought was a very singular sign for the longest, until I understood the function of the horns. So that's where the duality is expressed in the bull and the grazing animal. This is the duality. It's a day and night governing. So you got 12 and 12. Light authority, dark authority. Revealed authority, hidden authority. You got both in the duality of the Taurus. Although as a single animal, the horns account for a major part of his mythos. And I didn't know this, but I understood it very clearly when I'm sizing up the two main gifts I use, both using the voice, the messages when I'm talking to people, and when I'm rhyming, doing spoken word. These two things are like my main gifts. Like if I were to put my eggs in two baskets, these would be the two baskets that I'm putting the eggs in. This helps me to not spread myself too thin, because you don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. You'll be out here just trying stuff after a while, and trying stuff can get pretty expensive. You ever run into those people who just be trying stuff? You know, they don't even necessarily wait until they get good at any one thing for too long before they switch into something else. This could set you back financially. This could set you back creatively, and you'll just be the person with all the equipment and none of the production, none of the proceeds, no seeds coming from it. You'll just have a lot of material, but nothing to present. You don't want to be that person, because you'd have to defend that every single time. You know, you would have to start all over with your story. Well, I got this piece of equipment, this person, I know this person, that person, I've been to this place, that place. But what have you shown for it? And sometimes this can get tricky too, because you can say, well, you know, the person bought some nice things, and nice things is definitely a symbol of you showing that you got something. And it shows for something to have something literally. But this can be misleading too, because sometimes it can be a front. It could be putting on. You want to look for the work that they do. If it's visible, because not all work is meant to be on the main stage. A bean counter in a cubicle somewhere, they can't really show you what they're working with. They say present what it is you do. They would have to explain it. But these are their horns. So going back to the Taurus and the horns in a lot of scriptural passages, this has a lot to do with rulership, which you know, horn, rulership, but it also signifies announcement, signifies the announcing. So the voice, the sound off is the horn. Right? In Moses' age, you had the blowing of the ram's horn, but horns were blown. This also ties into the trumpet and the announcing of the arriving angels. This is all tied into the horns. The beast has 7 heads, but 10 horns. One of the horns seemed wounded, I think is how the illustration goes. But by reason of the recovery of the wound, the whole world marveled after the beast from a head wound. The head wound is pointed to back in Genesis when God is talking to Adam. Your seed will go to war against the serpent seed. Either he was telling it to Adam or Eve, or possibly even both of them simultaneously. It's probably addressing both of them when he said it. Said, you will bruise his head and he will bruise your heel. So it lets you know who the beast is by virtue of the location of the wound. It's a head wound that the beast recovers from. The wound is designed to look like a fatal one. But then this beast comes back. And this is connected to the horns, rulership. Some heads, some leaders, or some forms of rule can temporarily go down, can temporarily be out of service. Governments can shut down, right? That's like the breaking of a horn. But horns grow back. Speaking of horns, what we all look for is the unicorn, the one with the single horn, right? If your eye be single, your whole body be filled with light. Looking for the single horn, but the single horn is so rare that it's looked at like a mythological creature. It's a mythos for a person to be single-minded and focused. That's why they get assigned great positions of renown. That's why they have to be assigned the greatest at something, because they have that singular focus. And that singular focus being seen in someone is so rare that they just have to put it on his own pedestal and assign it a rarity. You have too many horns, you're in a briar patch. Thorns, right? And when a person is full of lust, you use the word horn and you put Y at the end. To be horny, to be pointing in all directions. Pointing in all directions of the senses. And if you're trying to go everywhere at once, at the same time, you're being pulled apart, seeing that there's only one you. And if you want to include higher dimensional understandings on this and say, well, my other selves, then in multiple realms, you're pulling yourself apart too. Look at it like, if you subscribe to that particular cosmology, and a lot of people do, where there's the reincarnation, parallel universes, there's like 7 or 8 of you, all existing in different realms. Now, if you subscribe to that, to be pulled apart from your purpose, you could be potentially pulling each of them off the path. Because what if you're all taking the same step, the same sitting, the same action, doing the same handshaking motion, but you're just in different places? One you, when you're walking, might be in the palace. The other you might be in the projects. But y'all taking the same steps, just in different realms. And so understanding your authority and understanding what your horns are, what your horns symbolize, and this is not just for those under the sign of Taurus or anybody in reference to horns or whatever the case, it's just to point out what horns represent. When you're announcing your authority, you have to understand that it is a tool for defense, not for offense, but for defense. The tusk of the wild boar is not just for the boar to pick it for sport. They're using that for defense. They got to fend for themselves and hunt for this. So even though hunting might be an act that puts you on the offense, it's really a defense against hunger. It's a defense against starvation. So the horns are necessary. But you don't want to have too many. 1 or 2 is enough, preferably 1. The beast has a whole bunch of horns, 10 of them. You don't need 10 horns. You don't need that many cooks in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? You don't need that many cooks in the kitchen. You don't need to say, well, when you ask a person what they're trying to do, the more things they add on can make them, sound a little unwrapped. So, well, what is it that you like to do? Well, I play basketball, football, tennis, hockey. The more sports they add, the person in the back of their mind listening is like, well, how is the person doing all of this? There's got to be some years where they can't even play some of these sports because there's got to be some overlap. And likewise, if you're a jack of all trades, this can be it. You can be always the person that's trying something new, but not necessarily excelling in anything but saturation, which is simply to be seen. But to be seen doesn't necessarily mean you're effective. If you have a very bland presence, it doesn't matter if you're seen everywhere. Unless you have marketing behind you that's gonna make you pop. That's one thing that the internet, social media is really showing us about ourselves. Essentially, you know, the marketing team is what it is for people who sign with labels and everything. And if they're in a different situation where they fulfilled all their contractual agreements and now they're trying to call themselves doing a little something on social media, you know, it doesn't always look as creative as when they had the machine around them. They don't always look as popular or as noteworthy. They don't always look like they got the same clout that they did when they was in the game, because it was something about the game and the components of the game that helped this person to play the game maybe a little bit better than they thought when it comes to the game. They might have had all of the verbal skills if they're rappers, all of the vocal skills if they're singers, but probably didn't have enough public speaking training to know how to talk to the crowds, to know how to answer interviews. They probably didn't have that training. The machine provided that. They probably didn't have skin thick enough to be told no by every radio station. But the labels did it, and probably had an inside connection to the radio stations where they wasn't going to get the no. But even if they got the no, that's the label. They got people that's built to take the no's. They got horns. Not too many though, but just enough. If you're going to be independent in any sphere, you got to understand that, yeah, to a degree, you're going to be tackling many horns. And I know that sounds contradictory to what I said earlier, that you don't want to be over too many horns. And this is true. But you have to do what you have to do before you rely on somebody that may or may not come through. So what, you might not be the best graphic designer, but you got enough skills to put a doggone album cover together, a playlist cover. You got enough to take a photo and resize it and crop it. You know enough to do that, so bang, you got an album cover. Okay, well, you don't have a promo team. All right, well, drop snippets of your songs. You got social media accounts. There go your promo right there. Whatever you do, add it on. Start getting t-shirts. Let them see you with the t-shirt in the video. Let them see you being whoever you are. All of this is going to tie in. So again, this is Super T Sigma of Sigma Program, and I thank you for your time and attention. You already know reaching is teaching. In the meantime, continue to vibrate high, people. Peace.